We went over to Mikey's dad's place, and we found a map that said that underneath this place there's buried treasure.
Don't give us none of your bullshit stories, huh?
Hey, kid, I want you to spill your guts. Tell us everything. Everything.
Everything. Okay, I'll talk. In third grade, I cheated on my history exam. In fourth grade, I stole my Uncle Max's toupee and I glued it on my face when I played Moses in my Hebrew school play. In fifth grade, I knocked my sister Edie down the stairs and I blamed it on the dog. But the worst thing I ever done, I mixed up all this fake puke at home, and then I went to this movie theater, hid the puke in my jacket, climbed up to the balcony, and then I made a noise like this. And then I dumped it over the side on all the people in the audience, and then this was horrible. All the people started getting sick and throwing up all over each other. I never felt so bad in my entire life.
Come on, beginning to like this kid, man.
A modern day remake of Matthew Vaughn's Lay a Kick, a Coen brothers end up with Timothy Chalamet.
A Citizen Kane prequel, a Midnight Cowboy sequel, Alvin and the Chipmunks deserve another squeakquel.
There's so many new ways to revisit sideways, but a graphic novel is how we choose to update.
But we still hold fast, you can't change the past on the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, starfighters, beavers, and ducks. This is Ruined Childhoods, and on this episode, we are in the Pacific Northwest exploring its caves, coasts, and hidden mysteries. This state is home to the world's shortest river and smallest public park, but also the largest squash and longest 24-hour rollerblade ride. Other films set and filmed in this state are One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Stand By Me, and Animal House. But on this episode, we are talking about possibly the most iconic film set in this state, the Goonies. That's right, we are in Oregon. Dan, how old were you when you found out that the state's name was pronounced Oregon and not Oregon?
Oh, I would say it's within the last 10 years. It's
Right?
definitely within the last 2 years. I grew up playing Oregon Trail, not Oregon Trail.
Yeah, you know, where we grew up, that was just the way it was pronounced, right?
Yeah.
Nobody fact-checked that.
No, we also didn't know anybody from there.
Well, yeah, no. It was a complete mystery. I mean, I don't think I even really knew much about it until I was in college and learned about, like, Elliott Smith and, like, you know, musicians from the... I mean, Seattle, clearly, people knew about, but I feel like, you know, Oregon was still a bit of a mystery, but clearly we were being inundated with it through cinema.
Yes.
I mean, our first episode of the show was Short Circuit.
Well, and we've also covered, I noticed I didn't hear mention of Kindergarten Cop.
Well,
Maybe
I mean,
missed that.
it just hasn't come up yet.
I mean, we've done Kindergarten Cop. And
No. We just didn't
oh.
bring it up in the episode yet. That's all.
Oh, yet. Oh, because, no, but I mean, I guess Astoria especially, but Oregon in general, also, you know, films that, like Stand By Me, I think I always just assumed it was in Maine.
I think that Stand By Me, because I don't think that I knew when I had first seen Stand By Me that it was like a Stephen King adaptation. And so the mainness that it could have been for some didn't land for me. I mean, it's not like I was like, oh, it's in Oregon, but I know that
Right.
having lived here for some time, the state is very proud of it being filmed here. And as we talked about on our main episode, maybe that was just an accident where they read Portland and assumed rather than fact-checked, much as the case with the pronunciation of Oregon.
I mean, if memory serves, really the only thing about Stand By Me other than the Stephen King connection that suggests the Northeast is the Yankees I guess, Cap and the Yankees fanship, which also doesn't necessarily scream New England because that would be like Boston Red Sox.
And
so
in Oregon, because we don't have, and I say we because I live in Portland, because we don't have a Major League Baseball team, it's kind of like pick whichever one you want. I'd say majority wise, it's people picking like the Mariners because that's probably the closest one. But
right.
I mean, I guess if you're in Southern Oregon, then maybe it's one of the Bay Area teams. But I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I never picked up on that aspect of it. But yeah, you're right. But also another Corey Feldman film.
Exactly. Yeah. The Corey Feldman runs deep throughout things here. We've actually, come to think of it, though, we've done quite a few Corey Feldman films because we've talked about Gremlins. We've talked about The Burbs. Yeah. We have talked about Dream a Little Dream.
That's right, in our body swap episode.
Oh yeah, that was the megasode. We talked about like 4 movies in that,
at least.
So we talked about I swear there's a Corey Feldman movie that I'm missing that we did in addition to the Goonies. Lost Boys.
Oh yeah, Lost Boys, of course.
Yes.
Man, we've really been Feldmaning it up. And I heard that there's a Corey Feldman movie that kind of like, I think it was made 10 years ago that kind of disappeared, that has been getting a resurgent, like they're re-releasing it or something. I don't know. It's a thing that I saw in the news.
So a Feldman
above the fold, New York Times. You didn't see it?
I must have been distracted. I must have been distracted.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Cult film The Birthday, starring Corey Feldman, lands 4K theatrical release from Drafthouse Films 20 years later. So there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was 2 days ago.
Okay, sounds good. Hey, I'm rooting for Corey Feldman.
Yeah. Yeah, he's...
Sure.
I think I might have talked about this when I was on one of our other Corey Feldman episodes, but when I was getting my most recent tattoo, which was still a few years ago, it was right after his audiobook for his memoir, Choreography, came out. And so we were listening to the audiobook while I was getting tattooed.
That feels right.
Yeah. And, that guy's had a really rough go, very outspoken about the issues in Hollywood and from firsthand experiences. And it's almost just like, he's shouting into a vacuum, and it's just like, why is nobody paying attention to what I'm telling you? And then things are coming out and it's like, yes, hello. I've been saying this for all these years. And I feel for the guy. And he certainly gave us such quality entertainment. And I think that for me, The Goonies was probably the first thing that I noticed him in. The role of Mouth is such an iconic role. And who doesn't love it?
No, and I mean, this came out a year after Gremlins.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, if you didn't see Gremlins, you saw this, and you definitely this just introduced this whole young ensemble, which also, if you go the year before this, and it's again the Steven Spielberg connection, is the Ke Huy Quan, who made his debut in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom a year earlier. And then comes together with Sean Astin and Corey Feldman and Jeff Cohen, who I think Jeff Cohen had mostly done like TV.
Yeah. I think that most of his career was TV, and then to move on to another role from Chunk must be pretty difficult. It's such an iconic performance that it's like, where do you go from there? And now is a really highly regarded entertainment lawyer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. has like for some time now. Like real, I think from what I remember, pretty smoothly transitioned from acting.
Good for him.
Into that. Yeah.
No, Goonies.
And
it just had the right cast, the right director, and maybe we could say directors because Steven Spielberg had such a hand in the production of it and directed several shots in the film. And it seemed like a really great partnership between Richard Donner and Steven Spielberg, and they just kind of elevated each other. And I'm happy for it. You know, Dan, have you ever seen Lady Hawk? The Richard Donner movie
have still not
was right before Goonies.
Right. Yeah, I still have not seen Lady Hawk. It is maybe the only Richard Donner movie I haven't seen. I didn't see Timeline, but
oh, I don't know if I've seen Timeline, but I'm just going to tell you, I watched a little bit of Lady Hawk. I had to turn it off. It was awful. It's, you know, Matthew Broderick in this like medieval adventure farce, I guess you could say,
with Michelle
Rutger
Pfeiffer
Hauer,
and Rutger Hauer.
Exactly. And Matthew Broderick is kind of like, you know, the comedic, charismatic lead. And he's joined by like this mysterious Rutger Hauer, and it just doesn't feel good.
Matthew Broderick and Rutger Hauer don't make it's not like, you know, the precursor to Matthew Broderick and Nathan Lane.
Exactly.
Like Rutger Hauer wasn't like the first great duo with Matthew Broderick. No.
And I mean,
really,
you know, much love to Rutger Hauer. I'd say anything in the wake of Blade Runner for him, it must be a tough hill to climb.
Though now that I think about other possible team ups with Matthew Broderick, I would have loved to have seen Rutger Hauer as Principal Rooney in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Look, if we're recasting all of, let's just say that actor's roles, you could do worse than Rutger Hauer.
But especially that role, that would be so.
It would be a very different movie. I don't know.
It would be a very different movie, but it'd be so good. That would be.
I mean,
fantastic.
However, I mean, Jeffrey Jones, when he did do it, he did it well. And
yes.
So Dan,
absolutely.
Do you remember first seeing Goonies?
Okay, yeah. So
Ooh.
I do. And so here's the details that I remember about it. So our grandmother took me to see it in the summer of 1985. And I remember that like she came to our house to pick me up to take me, and we had watched The Never-Ending Story.
Oh.
Like right before went to go see it. So it was kind of like this little double feature where like watched The Never-Ending Story on HBO and then went to go see the Goonies in the movie theater.
Interesting.
And I mean, I don't remember much about the experience other than just like I loved it because I was a, you know, almost 8-year-old kid.
You were the right age. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, of course. Like buried treasure, pirates, car chases.
Kids saying the word shit.
Absolutely talking about throw up.
Yeah.
And doing, hey, go into the bathroom.
Oh.
Doing hot toilet jokes. A toilet, like, putting, the guy, Troy, like, you know, smashing a guy into the ceiling.
Yeah.
Oh, right up my alley. On top of that, I remember just also like being a Jewish kid who like didn't get to see a lot of Judaism represented in movies, to have Chunk referencing like bar mitzvahs and you know, throwing some Hebrew in there. It's
also not a character who is overtly Jewish in the sense that like you look at him and you say, and there's the Jewish one. It's all in the way that he speaks about things. And so it's not like a caricature of like a Jewish kid. It's a caricature of a chubby kid, but it's not a caricature of a Jewish kid.
Right. Well, it's not like, I don't know what would be the classic Jewish kid caricature.
Oh,
there's some, anyway.
Yeah, I'm thinking more about like, somebody who maybe has like a darker complexion and carries himself in like a Woody Allen-y kind of, neurotic way.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get there. As we're digging into the movie, we'll talk about, there are a few things that don't carry over quite so well, and we'll come back to those more those aspects, because there's some stuff there with Chunk, though not as much as with other characters.
Absolutely. Should we do a synopsis in case anybody hasn't seen Goonies or needs a refresher?
I mean, yeah, but do you remember your first time seeing Goonies?
I mean, probably on VHS when I was old enough to start, watching stuff like that, or it was just like, well, Dan's watching it, so oh well.
Probably.
Yeah, I have nothing super memorable, although it's a movie that you put it on every few years, you see new things about it that you never caught before. Living in Oregon now, and Dan, you live in the Pacific Northwest, you've been to Astoria, you know what the vibe is like. It's a different experience, I think, having been to places like this rather than where we grew up in New Jersey. It's a very different kind of a vibe. And
true.
Astoria hasn't changed much, and
so true.
Power to it.
True.
Power to it. It knows what it is, and it knows what it is, what it what it shouldn't be, and it stays away from that.
It's recognizable, and this is something I remember the first time I was in Astoria, is even being able to remember not necessarily having watched the Goonies like right away, but just being able to look and say, oh, wait a second, that's the pizza place where Chunk is when he sees the car. Like that's where that happens. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely a different experience. But yeah, you recognize, if you know the Goonies and you visit Astoria, it is, a large, very similar. It's recognizable.
Yeah. All right. Here, it's synopsis time. Let's do it. Nestled in the coastal town of Astoria, Oregon, lies a small neighborhood referred to as the Goondocks, a playful colloquialism that for its residents is a badge of pride, but for the area's more affluent residents the term is derogatory. In fact, the Goondocks' younger inhabitants even refer to themselves as Goonies. At this particular point in time, the Goonies' homes are on the verge of mass foreclosure so that local developers can turn the Goondocks into a scenic golf course, unless, of course, they are able to buy their way out of the predicament. So when one group of Goonie kids think they find a map to a pirate's hidden treasure, they know that if they don't follow their guts and seek out the fortune, that they will have to move away from Astoria and likely never see each other again. The main Goonie instigator and inspirational speaker of the group is Mikey Walsh, an asthmatic tween who is committed to his friends and family. Mikey's older brother Brand is the sensible group elder who tries to keep them safe along the journey, and he's brought on against his better judgment. Mikey's next-door neighbor, Data, is the son of an inventor who hopes to follow in his father's footsteps. Clark, aka Mouth, is the wisecracking Goonie who hides his dissatisfaction and bitterness with humor. They are also joined by their heavy-set pal Lawrence, who they lovingly call Chunk. Chunk has a heart of gold and will do anything for his friends, but his clumsiness and propensity for stretching the truth to authority figures often gets him and those around him in trouble. Along on the treasure hunt are two teenage girls who aren't Goonies, geographically speaking, but earn their Goonie status with their actions. In fact, Andy, who follows them because she has a crush on Brand, has been affiliated with classmate Troy, the son of the main land developer looking to bulldoze the Goondocks. And along with Andy is her best friend, Snarky Steph, who acts as a calming presence for her BFF along their journey, despite being tested by Mouth's annoyances. Lastly, One-Eyed Willie is the long-deceased pirate whose gold and jewels are sought after by Mikey and the gang. But no treasure hunt is easy for the Goonies, especially since they are being chased by criminal family, the Fratellis, who own the rundown restaurant that's built directly on top of the entrance to the pathway leading to One-Eyed Willie's stolen fortune. But one member of the Fratelli family sides with the Goonies after befriending Chunk. Sloth, the youngest Fratelli, protects Chunk and defends the Goonies in order to thwart the efforts. Sorry, I lost my spot on my thing. Protects Chunk and defends the Goonies in order to thwart the efforts of his own family to put the kids in danger for their own gain. That's my synopsis.
There's a lot going on in this movie.
There's a lot going on in this movie, but it doesn't ever feel overwhelming.
No.
The characters are introduced perfectly. You know, the movie opens up with one of the Fratellis breaking out of prison with the help of the matriarch of the family and the brother. And as they are being chased by the cops, we see each of the main characters, doing whatever they're doing. And it's a beautiful way to introduce the characters.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it all leads to the Walsh house, Mikey and Bran's house, as they're working, their mom is trying to pack the place up since they're going to all have to move. And it's a really thoughtfully prepared story that,
yes,
as a kid, I didn't pick up so much on the whole land development thing as much, of course, as like the adventure elements of the movie and the shenanigans.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you pick up on when you're younger, you pick up on. I feel like I picked up on that the Walshes were going to lose their house, and that Troy's father was the one responsible.
Yeah.
Not so much. I wasn't picking up on the themes of wealth disparity, seeing it back in 1985, but like I understood that and that's something that really does work about this movie is that it there's more complex theme in there so that an older audience can get on a deeper level.
Yeah.
But you don't need that to understand the stakes. You just need to understand that the Walshes can't afford to keep their house.
But it's not even just the Walshes, it's the entire neighborhood.
Which as a kid, I don't think that was as clear to me.
Right. Yeah, it definitely seemed more singular to the Walshes' experience. When you do get it, when you understand it more, like Mikey's impassioned speech, this is our time. Like up there, this is their time. Down here, this is our time. Like it resonates more when you know how much like everybody has at stake, except for like Andy and Steph, but they can empathize.
Right. Well, and I wonder, like, so there are a few things about this movie that aren't necessarily explained, but you're like, okay, there's definitely a backstory there. So the fact that it made me question whether or not Andy and Steph are from the Goondocks, because they know these kids really well. And I'm like, why would a couple of high school girls know these like middle school kids?
Well, something that I noted is that in Astoria, kids are either 12 or 16. There's no other kids. I mean, Data has a younger sister. We've seen that. We've heard Chunk talk about a sister,
right,
Edie. But in this world, those kids are the only ones that really exist. And yeah, it's like Steph knows who Mouth is, and it's.
But I mean, Data as well.
Yeah, that's true. it's hard to say. I don't think that it's supposed to be that Andy and Steph are from the Goondocks. I think it's a situation, and then maybe, I don't know if you had this kind of experience in our hometown, but our hometown was literally divided by train tracks for the north side and the south side. And
divided into north and south, yes.
And there was always this, at least from my experience, this mentality that like the north side of town was like the wealthy side of town, and the south side,
the Socs lived on the north side with their polo shirts.
And where we grew up on the south side, it was the other side of the tracks.
Oh,
and,
yeah, no, greasy,
cars on cinder blocks. But the reality is that there really isn't much of a difference.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, maybe there was more of a difference 30-something years ago. But, yeah.
Right.
Not really. Not really. Very, very much fabricated.
Yeah.
Lore.
But I see the experience of these teens as essentially like, and also in our upbringing, in our schooling, you know, the north side and the south side converged for high school. And so, I mean, I don't know if it explicitly says what age the younger Goonies are. But if they are like freshmen in high school and like the other ones are seniors, then it's more possible that they're aware of each other. There is a deleted scene where they're in like a convenience store, and but it's not like it's Steph and Andy's first time meeting, you know, Mikey and Chunk and, you know, Mouth or anything.
Right.
So
yeah, I guess I was thinking about like, okay, so is it where like, well, Andy's from the Goondocks, but like she's attractive. So
she's a cheerleader, as we see in the beginning.
Right. So like, does she, you know, kind of get the preferential treatment? And also, does that make Troy feel like he is more, I guess, entitled? Which then again, I don't know that it really takes much to make Troy feel like he's entitled.
Yeah. Yeah, I
and
don't
then
know.
if Steph just gets to,
she's she's not the best developed character. You know, she's there to kind of supplement Andy's experience and also Mouth's experience.
Right. Yeah, she's there to balance, and I guess so. Like, this is where I had some issue as watching it from the 2024. It is that like the women are not well represented in this movie at all. Yeah. And the Steph Andy relationship it felt like, oh, they couldn't have the pretty one be smart, and we have to make it like the smart one's not pretty, and we have to have both of them, and like, but that was also was like their functions. To
be clear, you know, Steph can be pretty when her face isn't screwing it up. I totally see what you're saying though, and it almost seems like the purpose of them being wherever they are during the movie relies on a male character. So either they're with Troy or they've gone off to be with Brand.
Right. And Andy is,
unless she's at cheerleading practice.
Oh, exactly. Right. That's the one place.
Yeah.
Well,
or if Steph is in a barrel of crabs or whatever it is.
Oh, right. Yes, that's how we meet. That's our character introduction to Steph.
And you know what? Now that you mention it, it is possible that Steph is a Goonie in the sense, geographically speaking, since we do see her and she's like literally on the docks when we first meet her.
Yeah.
So that, you know, I hadn't even considered that, but that's a good point. Well, one other character that we see a lot of is Mrs. Walsh, played by Mary Ellen Trainor, and I really love that character. I feel like that one is a pretty well-developed character.
Yeah, yeah. It's Mrs. Walsh is, although, do we ever find out why her arm is in a sling?
No, but that's kind of the beauty of the Goonies is just like you don't need all of those questions answered because
No.
the world is so busy that you just know that life is happening at all times in a
Well,
story.
yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, Mrs. Walsh kind of, and Mary Ellen Trainor definitely does Beleaguered very well.
Oh, yeah.
And does the character really well. Like, she just needs to get through this period, this move, the packing up of the house. I love the trend. I love the running. There's the running gag of people saying words wrong and then saying, "Yeah, that's what I said." And I think she does it too, right?
She does it. Mikey does it, and Data does it.
Yeah,
it's such a fun little neighborhood quirk.
Yeah.
Also, this is debatable, and I'd like to talk to an expert on this at some point, but I wonder if, because of Mrs. Walsh's interactions with Rosalita, this movie passes the Bechdel test. Because I feel like Andy and Steph don't even pass it.
No.
Unless maybe there's an exchange about One-Eyed Willie. They're talking about the jewels, but I feel like that doesn't really count. But Mrs. Walsh and Rosalita talking about moving, although even it's through mouth. So I wonder if that kind of negates any possibility of a Bechdel test passing.
Yeah, I highly unlikely. I think if this movie passes the Bechdel test, it is purely accidental.
Or maybe Mama Fratelli and one of the girls on like the pirate ship or something.
Oh, that's Mama Fratelli there.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about Throw Mama from the Train, Anne Ramsey, a legend, and what a perfect role for her.
Yep. Mama Fratelli, classic. The Fratelli family is so perfectly cast. I love Robert Davi, Joe Pantoliano, John Matuzak as Sloth.
Absolutely amazing. And the characters, very quickly, you understand their personalities.
Yes.
The first one that we see is Robert Davi, breaking out of prison. You get that he's smart, that he can, outwit authority figures.
Mm-hmm.
Also that he's just like super ballsy. And his brother is a little bit more of a weasel and maybe more of a mama's boy.
Yes.
And you don't need much to convey those characteristics.
No. Well, that's the other thing about this movie, that it does incredibly well in introducing the characters, is just lets you know right away. And that's the great thing about these characters is that, like, you can kind of nail them in an instant, and you can establish within a few shots what each character is about. I mean, it's well written that way. Credit to Chris Columbus, screenwriter, and I'm not sure how much Spielberg developed the story, came up with the story for it, and I'm sure definitely had his hand in the writing of it, but Chris Columbus gets the screenplay credit.
And Chris Columbus has an excellent track record of creating really robust characters all throughout this era, moving on from the 80s and the 90s. And it's just a lot of fun to see the worlds that he creates come to life. And it's also like, in Home Alone, he also wrote Home Alone, right?
Yeah. Well, or did John Hughes write? Now I'm not sure.
Let's see. Filmography, writer. Well, he wrote Gremlins, we know that,
Mhm.
which has a smaller cast of characters, but still impressive nonetheless. Oh no, he didn't write Home Alone, he just directed it. He wrote 9 Months, which is a lot of fun. Christmas with the Cranks. But he does such a good job at developing incredible characters, and
Right.
it's just so much fun to see the things that he really, I don't know, develops. I mean, the first two Harry Potter movies, even though he didn't write them, you're introducing the world to this whole other world, and to do
Right.
that succinctly in a way that children can comprehend, I think
Yeah.
is a feat in and of itself.
Yeah. No, he's very, very gifted at communicating a lot of information, especially to young audiences.
Yeah. But also it's like exposition, it could be a really complicated thing to do in these worlds where there could be a lot more explanation,
Mhm.
but he also knows when to like pump the brakes on it and say, the audience is a little bit smarter than that. We don't need to just fill them with every single bit of info. I think like
Right.
something like Harry Potter, you have to do it a little bit more because it takes place in not our world, whereas Astoria, Oregon
Yeah.
is a real place.
Well, it's like you said, we don't really need to know why Mrs. Walsh's arm is in a sling.
Yeah.
We don't need that explanation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. In some movies, they would waste the time doing that, and it would take you out of it. Whereas, like in that first scene in the Walsh's living room, you get so much from the entrances of Data and Chunk doing the truffle shuffle, and then coming in and knocking over the statue, and
Bran just wearing the workout clothes, having
Brand. Okay, credit also to whoever did wardrobe on this movie, because
yes.
Brand they nailed perfectly.
Yes.
Also, this is Josh Brolin's first movie, and
Right.
what a way to start an exceptional career.
Seriously, and I don't remember him doing a lot after Goonies, before late 90s, early 2000s. I feel like there was a long period of time where maybe he took time off. He seems like the type of person, not to mention, all due respect, super talented, but also falls under the Nepo baby category.
Sure. And if that's what got him into Goonies, then great.
I think he's great. And
yeah, I'm also looking at his filmography, and you're right. There's not a lot that happens early in the career, and it's like the Goonies, and then there's like Thrashin', Finish Line, The Road Killers, Bed of Roses, and then Flirting with Disaster, which we've talked about on the show, which is so good.
Yes.
He's Hollow Man, Grindhouse, No Country for Old Men. No Country for Old Men is really like when things kicked off for him. American Gangster, then W. I mean, he's always been around.
Yeah, but really like versatile, because especially you talk about Flirting with Disaster, and he's so funny in that. His performance is so funny and fits so well just with the rest of that movie. Oh, right, your old favorite show, Mr. Sterling.
Okay, thank you for bringing up Mr. Sterling. Mr. Sterling, for those of you who don't know, which I am positive is all of you, is a show. It was maybe an ABC show that lasted like one season. Portia de Rossi was on it, but it was about this this junior senator who gets instated because his father passes away, and somehow he fills in for the rest of his father's term. And he's like a radical progressive, and he's like shaking things up in Washington, and it was a really good show. I mean, those shows come and go all the time. It's like Madam Secretary.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But Yeah, it's Josh Brolin trying to figure things out. But yeah,
And-
if you look at his like 2007 on, it's just like banger after banger. Grindhouse, No Country for Old Men, American Gangster, W, Milk, to a lesser extent Jonah Hex, but it was still a pretty big one. True Grit, Men in Black 3, in which he plays a young Tommy Lee Jones beautifully.
Right. Like that was the selling point of that movie, was him doing Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah. And then, he does the movies like Inherent Vice. And then, of course, the like Avengers movies and Sicario, Hail Caesar,
Hail
he's the
Caesar.
lead of, which of course we love. The Dune movies. I mean, he has just like quietly been, impactful in our movie viewing lives since 1985. Also, one of the
Seriously.
things that I was thinking about with Brand, you hear a lot from actors, and when they're talking about like the good things about working on certain film sets, and some of them are just like, oh yeah, there was that scene where we got to wear pajamas because it was just they got to be comfortable for 2 weeks shooting a scene or whatever. Brand was wearing sweats. He must have been the most comfortable person there. I mean, unless he's like getting wet and all that kind of stuff, but like you're just wearing like comfy sweats with cool little shorts on top and a little bandana. What a cool, comfy dude.
Very, very cool and comfy. And John, while we're actually talking about like that opening, that first scene in the Walsh's house, so I picked up on something, and it made me think of one of your favorite things about movies.
Oh, yeah.
So we know that we, as in me and anybody else who is not listening for the first time, knows how much you enjoy when a movie references a recent movie.
Yeah.
Another recent movie, Goonies, takes it a step further and references itself. Because the music video for Cyndi Lauper's Goonies Are Good Enough is playing on the TV.
That is true. That's true.
And I'm like, are we going to see clips of the music video where like the kids are being chased by Rowdy Roddy Piper and the Iron Sheik?
No, we just see Cyndi Lauper, but that'd be really twisted if that happened. Well, I mean, this movie does reference Gremlins. I mean, like indirectly. It's in the scene where Chunk calls the cops, and the cop is just like, "Oh, is this like the time that blah blah blah, or is this like the time that the monsters like couldn't get wet or whatever?" And it's like,
right. Yes. Which actually, it's funny. That reminds me of another crazy internet theory that I saw about this movie and another Steven Spielberg produced classic, Back to the Future. That apparently there's a theory, and that there is some evidence to this in the Goonies that suggests that the Goonies and Back to the Future take place on the same day, that it's October 26th, 1985 in both movies.
Wow, that could be.
Cuz I guess the newspaper that has the article about the Fratellis is from 2 days earlier, and it's dated October 24th.
The newspaper article about the Fratellis, though, that couldn't possibly have been from that day, though. The newspaper would have been from
2 days.
Oh, it's 2 days before.
The newspaper is dated October 24th.
Right.
And the movie takes place on a Saturday.
But that's the day that Robert Davi's character broke out of prison. So wouldn't this be like maybe a couple months after that?
No, when he breaks out of prison, like this is like that day.
Right. But the newspaper article, I'm trying to remember. Let me see if I can find like a picture.
I don't know. I'm also getting this. I didn't like go back into the movie to pause and freeze frame. So, but yeah, I guess apparently there's some other hints. There's a couple of other things in the movie that suggest that it takes place on October 26, 1985.
Yeah, there's Fratelli's at it again, and then it has all three of their mugshots. Although it seems like Joey Pants's mugshot's taken like outside and like good lighting. um,
It's just
but
his
let's
headshot.
see. Yeah, October 26, 1985. On the afternoon of the 19th of October, 1985, Jake Fratelli was broken out of jail by... Okay, so I guess
Oh,
I thought that it took place on the same day as the jailbreak.
that's what I thought too.
So I guess it could be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So close. I don't know. Interesting. And then if you throw Gremlins in there, like,
Well, I mean, this is presuming that either Chunk saw Gremlins and tried to pass off the story as his own, in which case, did he be like, there's a kid who looks exactly like Mouth that's in this movie? Or is it a parallel universe where like a different, like Corey Haim is playing the character in Gremlins?
it's the Last Action Hero universe where
Yes.
Stallone is the Terminator. Yes, of course. And Corey Haim is in the Lost Boys and everything. Yes,
That is pretty funny.
actually, wait, Corey Haim is in the Lost Boys.
Well, Corey Haim is in Lost Boys, yeah, more prominently, in fact, than
Sorry,
Corey Feldman.
that was dumb. That was a bad example.
I'm trying to think of like another duo that could have been them in a parallel universe, Lost Boys, but I don't think that like the Lawrence brothers were established at that point. They would have been too young.
Tobey Maguire and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Even they would have been too young, I think.
I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, it's just a fun. I thought that was interesting, and I'd never even thought about like when does this movie take place.
Right.
I kind of just thought it took place over the summer, and that's why they all have nothing to do. But also, summer in the Pacific Northwest tends to be much less rainy. So
yeah, I mean, I guess this was just like a weekend.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. So anyway, I want to go back to the Rosalita character.
Yes.
Who it felt like it is one of those characters that falls under the like, oh, we're making bad like nationality, ethnic stereotypes, and playing into those, and
yeah,
just her demeanor, throughout all the bit with Chunk, like it's when Chunk's and that was a funny, like that's a funny bit.
Wait,
and
which bit with Chunk?
The bit with Chunk when they're walking through the house and he's translating.
Oh, that's Mouth,
not Chunk. Yeah.
It is funny, and it established, but that's what's so good about the writing is that establishes the fact that he knows some Spanish, and it gets us where we need to get by adding in a funny, if not slightly problematic scene.
Well, yeah, and I think that ultimately Rosalita as a character is probably there so that at the end she can, find the
marble bag.
Yeah, find the marble bag.
Chekhov's marble bag.
Understand what it is. Yeah. Yeah. So like, yeah, it's not, and we're looking at a movie from the 80s, but it's also like I feel like they lean into that a bit also with Data.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Ke Huy Quan in that era was certainly tokenized, but also I know that from what Ke Huy Quan had said is that he never felt othered in the productions, between this and Temple of Doom.
Right. Well, no,
it's a co-lead essentially.
Yeah. No, and I get the sense that like that's not, when you look at it now with that hindsight.
Yeah,
it definitely is a lot cringier, and I'm sure at the time, I can't imagine that like he himself was necessarily like exploited or you know.
I mean, he has a funny sounding voice for lines like "Hold on to your potatoes" or $50 bills,
Yeah.
and that is exploited, and it wouldn't have played the same if it was done by Corey Feldman.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
But I'm thrilled that these movies happened for Ke Huy Quan in order to get him to us nowadays, where he's, you know, an Oscar-winning actor. And it's such a shame that, you know, he did have such a rough go at it during, you know, the 90s and the 2000s.
Yeah.
I mean, he was doing other work, but like, you know, didn't feel like he fit in anywhere in Hollywood as an actor. And I'm grateful for the opportunities that he had as a child that got him into the door, because it all happened for him by accident.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's also very stereotypy for the Asian character to be the one that's all into gadgets and gizmos.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
I'm glad that like there's more to his character than that. And you know, when we see him like and his father at the end, and they have this like sweet moment, and it's like you can't hug a photograph, and you know, it's really lovely, and it is fun to see how alike he is to his father, and you just understand him as a character even more.
Yeah, no, that
if it was done nowadays, it'd be just done differently.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, look at how, you know, the representation of black people in the movie. There are none.
I'm like, crickets.
There are none.
Yeah,
Yes.
If there were any, I completely missed it, but yeah.
Yeah. Nope. And so, I mean, yeah, and that's, of course, like, we are talking about a movie from 1985.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's, I mean, yeah. Well, and actually, another thing that I read about it was that because Steven Spielberg had been directing The Color Purple.
Mm.
And that apparently, while he was working on The Color Purple, was where he came up with the idea for this. And it all came from the question of, like, what do kids do on a rainy day when they have nothing else to do?
Well, that's pretty fascinating. And
Yeah.
to see where his mind went. And I think that also Steven Spielberg, especially coming off of like, you know, Indiana Jones movies and working with Ke Huy Quan, and you know, this child actor in an adventure movie, it's such a natural progression to then be like, oh, what if they were all children on this adventure? Right. You know, and I don't know how much of that was in his mind, but it feels proper.
Well, and I do think it also kind of picks up a little bit from E.T.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Just the idea of that, like, the adults aren't doing the right things. It's up to us kids. And Goonies actually, it's interesting, like, has that similar structure of there's the older brother.
Yeah.
And I mean, in that you've got the younger sister.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's been a long time since I've seen E.T. Like, does he have a friend group in that? Like, does he have his Goonies? Elliot?
I don't even really, it's been a long time since I've seen it too. I don't really remember there being many like buddies. Clearly there's Gertie.
Right.
But yeah, I don't really remember too many other, I mean, aside from just like his classmates when he's like drunk in class because E.T. decides to get buzzed at home. Yeah, I don't really remember too many other kids as being like part of his core group. But right. I also know that like E.T. was kind of like, you know, about Steven Spielberg's upbringing, of a child of parents going through a divorce, and it's like the story of E.T. is kind of like his way of coping with the story of his parents' divorce through a very, very strange channel.
It's his first draft of the Fabelmans.
Well, that's exactly it. It's just like he didn't know how to articulate his feelings, so he got it out however he could, and that was Close Encounters and E.T.
Yeah.
So, which I liked both way better than the Fabelmans, for what it's worth.
Haven't even seen the Fabelmans.
I'm just not crazy about movies that are a love letter to cinema. Because it's just like, all right, you're just, you're making movies for movie people. And it's like, we get it. You love cinema.
Well,
it's kind of one of the reasons why Hugo didn't work for me.
See, that I felt like I think I was more open to that, because it was based on a novel that wasn't written by
right, but that's the line that comes out in all of the marketing, is it's a love letter to cinema.
Yeah. You see, Hugo, I don't know. Yeah, but I think what turned me off from the Fabelmans was like, Steven Spielberg is making a fictionalized movie about his own like coming of age, and I've seen interviews and the document, like HBO did that documentary on Spielberg that was like just really comprehensive, and it's like I've seen that, and I'm like, I don't want to. What am I gonna do? Watch this for a little Easter egg where you see like little 10-year-old Stevie like drawing a shark in his notebook or something, and I'm like, it's Jaws.
The best part of the Fabelmans is the very end, which features David Lynch, and I will say no more.
I mean, that's all you have to say is it features. I remember, I remember like who David Lynch plays in it. But
you do remember?
Yeah. I know he has a cameo as another legendary director.
Yeah, I'm actually blanking on who it was.
I mean, I didn't know. I thought you were just being cagey. John Ford, right?
Oh yeah, John Ford. That's right.
Yeah,
who we've talked about quite a bit on this show.
Yeah. So anyway, no, I don't need to see that. And I like, Steven Spielberg's made so many movies that, of course, it he's hit and miss, but I do feel like what's really fascinating about Steven Spielberg is that a lot of the movies that I really feel like define him for the public are some of these movies that he didn't necessarily direct, but are his movies, like the Goonies and Gremlins.
Yeah. He was there on the set pretty much the entire time they were filming the Goonies, just majorly supportive of Donner, and it seems like the whole cast just loved working on the movie. The commentary track, which was done, I think, when DVDs first started being made,
yes,
is really cute. It's you don't get too much inside information, but it's just like the whole cast and Richard Donner, and it's pretty much just them reminiscing and talking over each other, and
they're having a good time.
They had a wonderful time, and they were saying, like, in the end scene when they're on the beach, for a lot of them that was like their real families that were with them. And it was kind of like a way, because I think they shot it pretty much in order. And so like that was a way to like cap off this like incredible filmmaking journey that they had. And then of course like 5 months of ADR, because they were recording inside of like impossible conditions. But just so much fun, and you can tell that they have love for it. There is one funny moment in the commentary when Martha Plimpton is just like, so we're really going to watch this whole thing, huh? All right. And you got to love Martha Plimpton. She's,
of course,
a legend.
Of course. Yeah. Yes. But yeah, no, it's funny because you mentioned that, and I was thinking to myself as I was taking out my DVD
Mm-hmm.
to watch the movie, it was like, wow, yeah, this was like one of this was one of the first DVDs. I definitely got this movie on DVD when it came out on
Oh,
DVD.
okay. Yeah.
So and I remember watching the or listening to the commentary track.
That DVD, if it's anything like the Blu-ray, which seems to be just the same content, terrible menu screen, but fantastic bonus features. Because there's like
Yes.
making a featurette, you get all of the deleted scenes, you get the Cyndi Lauper music video. It's
Mhm.
really delightful.
Yeah.
And it's one of those movies that has just stuck with people for so long. It like redefined how people think about the Baby Ruth candy bar and say the words "Hey, you guys." And
Mhm.
yeah, we haven't even really talked about Sloth at all.
No.
But what a fantastic character that seems to only be the way that he is because he got dropped a few times, which is not really how that works, but okay.
Yeah.
But it's just such a sweet story between him and Chunk. And like, I can't help but just like well up when Chunk is like, "You're going to live with me now. I
Yeah,
love you.
I'm gonna take
And it's
care
just,
of you.
yeah, take care of you." And it's just like, oh my God. And it's, you think about it like like somebody who's adopting a dog that's been like tortured, who's just been
Yeah.
like, chained to a tree. And it's just like, "You're coming with me now, and everything's gonna be better, and you're gonna sleep in my bed with me." And
See,
yeah.
for me, I just finished teaching a unit on Of Mice and Men.
Yeah.
So watching that, I just thought, they're gonna be Lenny and George.
They're gonna be better than Lenny and George, though.
Well, I mean, yeah, because it's not the Great Depression, and Chunk was probably not gonna have to shoot Chunk in the back of the head, or
Yeah,
shoot
Sloth.
Sloth in the back of the head.
Yeah. Also, it's almost like Lenny and Lenny. Like the two of them would just be enabling each other to like just eat ice cream all day and goof around.
Lenny
and
and
watch
Lenny
old
was
movies.
actually SNL's take on it. In
Oh, really?
in the early 90s. So Malkovich hosted in 93, and
I do
Mice
remember
and
this.
Men
Yeah.
came out in 92, and they did a sketch where it's Phil Hartman as Michael Eisner, who says, who's like, "Yeah, Disney is remaking Of Mice and Men, but our test audiences didn't like George. They thought he was too mean. So we just replaced George with another Lenny." And it's Farley playing the other Lenny.
Oh my God.
And it's funny because the end of it is after Farley accidentally kills Jan Hooks, and Lorne Michaels comes in, and they're just like, "Take it away," and Lorne's like, "Here, Chris, look over there, and I'll tell you about Hollywood."
Oh my God.
And Chris is like, he's like, "Oh, am I gonna be in Coneheads too? Is there gonna be a Coneheads too?" And Lauren's like, "Oh yes, you'll be a huge movie star."
Oh my God. That is so funny.
Yeah.
Coneheads too.
It's fantastic, and unfortunately, it is not on. If you go on Peacock to stream that episode, that sketch isn't there.
I bet it's
So-
on YouTube. Somebody probably.
yeah,
put it
yeah.
there,
It's on YouTube. It's not the easiest thing to find. I can always send it your way
That's so funny.
because I show it to my students after we read the book and watch the movie. So,
That's great.
but that's the Chunk and Sloth, but also like the Chunk loves Sloth, Sloth love Chunk.
Yeah.
So nice.
Yeah. So before we get to our explanations of how we would bring back the Goonies, one way that the legacy has been extended has been through a recent purchase of the Walsh's house in Astoria.
Right.
And the current owner is very welcoming of people to come and take pictures, to do the truffle shuffle outside, is very respectful of the neighbors, and like has a map of like where to park on the website for the house. And you can also make donations on that website so that it can help them with upkeep of the house, because I think that they mostly have it for the public to kind of have access to the outside to, you know, pay their respects when they're visiting filming locations in Astoria.
Nice.
Kindergarten Cop, Short Circuit, Goonies. So I just love that people do that kind of a thing. And Astoria is a beautiful place, and it's just an awesome way to explore a city is through its film legacy.
And it's just nice to know that the owners of that, because like, yeah, you want to do that stuff, but you also want to respect people's privacy.
Yeah.
You want to respect the fact that these are private homes. So it's great when the owners are just kind of like make it known, welcome the legacy, and are, and also because by doing that, because like people are going to come and take pictures no matter what. Some people care more than others. Some people are more respectful than others. So embracing it, and like then kind of enables you to, like you said, manage things, give people instructions for parking.
Yeah. And I was fortunate enough to speak with the owner of the house, who has lovingly brought it to the public, and managed to have a little chat with them. So let's listen to that for a few minutes.
Hey, you guys!
Starfighters, here's what happened. I knew I'd be talking with Bayman Zachary, who recently bought the Goonies house out in Astoria, Oregon. Turns out we ended up talking for an hour. So rather than release a 2.5-hour episode, we're putting that out as a bonus episode, which will drop the Friday after this episode's release. We had a great chat and didn't want to cut anything out, so be sure to look out for that bonus episode. All right, back to the main episode. The idea of moving into a beloved movie location house and giving it the proper due is pretty awesome, and doing it in a place like Astoria is great. And also it's like you can do like long-term rentals of the house to stay there.
Nice.
Similarly to the Short Circuit house just down the road.
Really, you could have yourself a nice little like movie, especially if you like the type of movies that we like.
Yeah.
Nice little movie trip there. But you know, that actually it makes me think. I feel like now that I think about it, anytime I see news about a movie house being put on the market or something, I feel like it's always one, like Home Alone, Mrs. Doubtfire, and the Goonies. What is it? It's the Chris Columbus.
That's true.
What is it with this man's screenplays and like real estate? He's
you're right.
Turning these movies into movie stars, or these houses into movie stars.
Exactly. Wow, that is incredible. Well, what's also special about the Goonie house is that, you know, when we see the outside of the house, it has this like Rube Goldberg set up to a very complicated situation to open up a fence.
Which, by the way, what was the deal with Warner Brothers in 1985 with Rube Goldberg machines? Because
Pee-wee's
we've got
Big
this,
Adventure.
we've got Pee-wee. I mean, that's just off the top of my head.
Well, in the commentary, Richard Donner was just talking about how he loved Rube Goldberg machines. And so I guess that was just a hot thing at the time.
I mean, that's two of my DVDs that came out with the Warner Family Home Entertainment imprint.
Yeah, there you go.
That have wonderful special features, horrible menus, and Rube Goldberg machines.
Dan, and we'll get to our thing soon, but I'm also wondering, and I don't even know if I have an answer for this right this second, but like, I want, like, if you could live in any like significant like home from a movie, what would you choose?
Oh, if I could live in any significant home from a movie.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be significant, but if something jumps out to you.
You know, one of the what I'm trying to think of what pops out. I'm sure there are more interesting things. There are more interesting options, but I'm like, honestly, the Buxton's house in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, like that bathtub, pretty sweet.
That house is too much upkeep. There's too much. It's too much house.
Yeah,
but that bathtub is.
Taking care of it.
I mean, that's a pool. It's not a bathtub.
No.
It is funny that you say the Buxtons, because I probably would want to live in Pee-wee's house.
You see, to me, that's too much mess.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't have all of the stuff out. Like, I don't need the breakfast machine.
Oh. Then it's just
but
kind of
like
a regular house.
Right, but it's like to have people come up to the house and, you know, say, "Oh, this is Pee-wee's house, Pee-wee's Big Adventure."
Oh, you mean like in real life?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant, just like if I could inhabit a fictional character's home. Oh, okay.
Does that change your answer?
Well, I mean, yeah, honestly, I mean, it would probably be that like something like the Goonies house.
Oh, okay.
Because, well,
you like a coastal kind of a thing, and you like the vibe of the fan base.
Yeah. I mean, it's also like it's where it's located is. I mean, it's not like necessarily out of the way.
No,
but. Yeah, I feel like it's in a place where it wouldn't be a terrible inconvenience or annoyance.
No, it's a beautiful town. It's close to a lot of cool stuff. You also have like Cannon Beach nearby where they filmed other parts of the Goonies. And
no, I suppose I might also, because I mean, if I could just pick a house, like maybe the Mrs. Doubtfire house, very expensive.
Oh my God, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. See,
I wouldn't.
I also feel like
mind.
I also feel like the McAllister's house. That's just too much. Like the Father of the Bride house is another one that comes up a lot, and it's like, that's a lot of upkeep too.
Yeah, the Father of the Bride house was. I mean, you know, not that's modest compared to the McAllister's house.
Sure, yeah, but still very
Father
nice.
of the Bride house was, was nice.
Yeah.
Well,
Dan, let's get to the matter at hand. What would you do given the opportunity to bring back the Goonies?
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to take the opportunity to bring up a gripe that I have with a totally different movie.
Ooh.
For not using the Goonies. So I would like to reference the movie Ready Player One, a Steven Spielberg film, and a pretty poor adaptation of a fun book. And in that book, our main character, part of the challenge, because he's going through all of these challenges all based in 80s pop culture, rooted in 80s pop culture. And in the book, he has to reenact the movie War Games.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now, because the movie was produced by Warner Brothers, they couldn't. I don't know if they even entertained the option of using War Games, but they didn't use War Games. But they used The Shining.
Yeah, which was a weird choice.
It was a bad decision. This is you've got a movie catering, you've got an adventure movie that is catering towards like the tween audience.
Yeah.
About 80s culture. So why would you use a movie released in 1980, so the very beginning of the 80s, that's like a pretty hard R horror movie?
Yeah.
And why would you not use The Goonies, which is set up perfectly for that? It was released smack dab in the middle of the 1980s, was produced by Steven Spielberg. I mean, maybe he didn't want to do that, but then also why have the T-Rex from Jurassic Park running through, chasing the DeLorean through a scene, especially because Jurassic Park came out in the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even just to have like Sloth in the background doing something would be a lot of fun and an easy way to kind of fit that in there. I totally see what you're saying.
But
I don't disagree.
like that whole sequence would have been like it was like, oh, this is the perfect opportunity. And
Well,
no,
also, it's like, even if in the background you saw people, because they have like the skins, like their character skins,
yeah,
just in the
yeah,
background have like the Goonies crew walk by.
yeah.
That'd be a lot of
Have
fun.
like put the Fratellis in there. What?
Yeah.
Like, why not?
Tell me
So
somebody can't go in there with gray sweats with blue shorts over them, a little bandana.
it was, yeah, it was ridiculous. Anyway, so that was, so that's one thing.
So you would re-edit Ready Player One, a not beloved movie based on a beloved book.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't bother. I'm just gonna gripe about it for a moment. So all right, a couple of ideas here. I think that there seems to be some prequel fodder here.
Mm,
You have Mikey references how like people were looking for the treasure when their parents were their ages,
yeah,
and there's the Chester Copperpot
of course. Although we know how
storyline.
that story ends.
True, true.
Doesn't get very
Um,
far.
So there's some prequel fodder, but I think I would lean towards remake. I'm leaning
Hmm.
towards remake here. I'm leaning towards a like present day and set it up. I'm thinking maybe a slightly different setup, because really what needs to happen is the Goonies need to get in trouble and have their
Mm.
phones taken away,
Okay.
leading them to just like, what else are we going to do? Maybe they get in trouble and like maybe we keep the real estate storyline and they get in trouble and they still have to clean out the Walsh, they have to clean
Yeah.
out the Walsh's attic. Or maybe like as part of their punishment, like if it's a school thing, they have to come in and they have to like clean out the school library archives, and that's where they find the map. Or they have to like, because the library is going to get demolished to become something else. You can
A
still
golf
work
course.
in that.
Troy
that
is
thing.
building the golf course finally.
The so anyway, like whatever happens, they get their phones taken away. They find this thing and they do it, and maybe we set up something, like maybe there's a little bit more backstory. It sets up that like they're into geocaching or something like that. So like they already have like a little, background, I guess.
They have a proven interest in seeking out treasure.
Right. Yeah. So and like you can still work in the Fratellis, or like the idea of the Fratellis.
Mhm.
You can work in the same ideas, but I think it would be kind of cool to do it present day and have it be where like, oh, okay, well, yeah, maybe if they had their phones on them. I thought about this, because then there's the whole message like, well, then isn't the message like, don't take their phones away because they need them for safety? No, because Brand will still have his phone on him and just won't have reception.
Fair enough.
So it's going to be like, what good are the phones anyway?
Yeah.
There. So that's kind of the idea, is like, because that's the thing about this movie, is that they don't have anything else, and
Right.
they're like, they don't even have Atari. So
That's true.
like, let's take this group of modern day kids and like it's like let them rediscover what it's like to be an adventurous kid.
Well, I also like the idea of a setup of, at the beginning, it's just like, oh my God, you can just watch any TV show or movie with just like pressing a button. You can listen to any song just by like speaking into a thing and getting whatever you want. you don't know the struggles that we had in the 80s where we had to like go and buy a tape and listen to it on a tape player, and the tape could break, and it's like you needed to have this stuff, and video rental stores were you never knew what they were going to have in stock, or at that time they were really only just getting started. And so yeah, there's so many things. It's just like you don't know what it was like to to live without these creature comforts. And
Right.
so
And
yeah.
and sometimes like how to be resourceful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this movie kind of like sets that up really well, especially because it does put them in a place where like they potentially wouldn't have reception, and where their phones potentially wouldn't be any use to them anyway.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, because that was when I was thinking about the storyline, I was like, oh God, but what about, I'm like, yeah, but what about like this kind of side message of that where it's like, well, if they had their phones, they'd have been able to call for help. But no, because they're off on like underneath an old shut down restaurant.
Well, and what was also great about the Goonies, when Chunk actually does call for help, is that he has already been established as an unreliable, exaggerator. So him being the one to call doesn't do them any good anyway. So
Right.
yeah, just masterfully crafted. So I totally see what you're saying. There's a lot of ways that you could get into something like that nowadays.
And I would
bringing it
much
back.
rather, and to address the elephant in the room, I know that like there's constantly talk of a sequel, and I know it didn't happen, and it really shouldn't. If it wasn't going to happen like within 5 years of this movie coming out, like no, it doesn't need a sequel. Let it be its own thing. But you can
Yeah.
take the Goonies, and I think you can remake it and make the new thing its own thing, and still have the spirit of the Goonies.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if it was going to happen, it would have probably happened right at the beginning of like the Stranger Things craze.
Well,
And
yeah.
that would have been the time to like really cling on to like this a group of kids thing. I mean, Super 8, an homage to Spielberg as presented by J.J. Abrams, I thought was a fantastic movie and has a lot of like Goonies feelings to it. And
Yes.
I think that movie is just really delightful, and Elle Fanning is just absolutely incredible. And yeah, we get little things like that are, they have like Goonies DNA in them.
Right. Oh, and
Yeah.
and Super 8 and Stranger Things are, yeah, the two clearest examples of that, I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's your idea? What are you gonna do?
So I feel like mine is kind of obvious. We just go mega prequel and do the story of One-Eyed Willie.
Oh, all
We
right. All right.
first of all, when it comes to pirate movies, we really only have the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Those are the only ones that like really hit in like and I wouldn't even want to say like present day, because that was already like 20 years ago that the first one came out, and I don't know what's happening with that franchise right now. But it's such a great opportunity though to explore this story that we only hear from like Mikey's retelling of what he remembers hearing.
Mm,
And there's an opportunity to really get fun with it. He's got the guy who does all the booby traps, and we have the story about them like outrunning like the armada, and ultimately getting trapped in a cave and developing a strategy for protecting their treasure. And what a fun thing to explore. And it's what's also nice about it is that it takes place so long before the Goonies that you don't need
yeah.
to have any of that like connecting thread to like the story of the Walshes, or even like Astoria, or the coast of Oregon, because it at that time wasn't even established by Americans.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, it's long enough away where I feel like it definitely it can be considered part of like the Goonies lore,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
is in no way like it's still its own thing aside
Yeah.
from that it's telling a story from this movie.
Yeah. What also I think is good about it is that it's still grounded in reality. Like
Mhm.
I mean, well, okay, I will say I don't know if you've seen Our Flag Means Death, but that is a pirate show and it's fantastic. It's so good. Um so I feel like it can kind of have not as like witty of a trajectory as Our Flag Means Death, but like there are
Mhm.
ways to do a pirate story that aren't like Pirates of the Caribbean that have like these supernatural things that
Yeah.
happen in it that just take
Yeah.
you out of it. I mean, just to have like a swashbuckling adventure used to
Yeah.
be enough. And I think it could be enough again.
I agree. Would love to see a straight up old fashioned, just a swashbuckling adventure.
Yeah. And also, it'd be really fun. You can have those little like nods to the Goonies. Like maybe you see the string of pearls that Mouth has in his mouth, and like like the jewels that Andy like puts on her head and stuff. You don't need to
Yeah.
like do the mug in front of the camera with it or anything, but like just to have them there to be like little Easter eggy things. That's a lot of fun.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you're gonna have the ship. You got to recreate that ship.
That amazing ship. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something that I noticed about the ship that I hadn't noticed until my most recent watch is that the like One-Eyed Willie and his treasure are all on like the third story of the ship, and they have to like bust through the thing to get up to it. And it's kind of like the Walsh's house, the attic. That's where all the
Oh.
treasure is. Like the antiquities that his father has from like his curatorial job and like
Yeah.
the map to One-Eyed Willie. And it's like, it's almost like the ship mirrors the Walsh's house in that way, where it's like you get up through the attic and that's where the goods are.
The rich stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Listeners, if you have ideas on how you would want to bring back the Goonies or any other movie that we've talked about on the show, email us ruinchildhoodspod@gmail.com. Check out ruinchildhoodspod.com for a whole bunch of fun stuff. Dan, we're going to
Yes.
Pennsylvania on our next episode.
That we are. We are
Tell me
going
about
to
it.
Pennsylvania. We are going to be looking at another movie from 1985, but two movies that have very little in common because I don't think too many people often compare the Goonies to the movie we'll be talking about on our next episode, Witness, directed by
Yeah.
Peter Weir, starring Harrison Ford, Kelly McGillis, Lucas Haas, Danny Glover, Alexander Godunov,
Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Witness, a classic.
Yeah. Last week we
And-
were in 1987. This week we're 1985. 1985 in the next episode. We'll get out of this era at some point.
But we really, I know there's a lot of movies that take place in Pennsylvania, but you know what? This one takes us from Philly to Amish country. So we really get to see two very distinct ends of a dynamic state and a state that you've lived in. So
I know we're going back to back with states I've lived in, so that's exciting for me.
Magnificent. So I'm looking forward to watching Witness for the first time in a long time and discussing it with you.
Well, Dan, as you are walking across a log with slick shoes, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.